Hey, it's the 40 Watt Garage. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back. This is the day 3 of the diagnosis, removal, inspection, and repair of my Factory 5 Mark IV Roadster. Previous episodes in this series detailed some of the problems that I found with my master cylinders for the brakes and the clutch. I alluded to what I thought the problem was, and today I believe I'll reveal what I think is the root source of the problem. If you've hung with me this long, thank you. And today I will show what I think is the problem. And as I stated before, it was ignorance on my part. It goes all the way back to the initial build of the car. And hopefully by watching this, you will not make the same mistake, or if you did the same mistake that I did, you will take measures to correct it as soon as possible. So thanks again for staying with me, and let's get into it. The cup on the left is brand new fluid, fresh out of the bottle. In the middle is 6 months old. I changed the brake fluid before we drove to the London, Ohio Cobra show. And then the fluid on the right is 5-year-old fluid because I did not change my clutch reservoir. And I don't know what's going on, but the fluid in the center is turning kind of a gold color. And this fluid on the right with the clutch is kind of black, and it has this kind of black stuff, particulate, suspended in it. It doesn't seem to settle out, but there were some kind of big pieces down in the bottom of the cup. Brand new. 6 months old, 5 years old, black crud in it, turning a gold color, and then fresh out of the jug. Well, part of this procedure, since I'm taking everything apart and giving everything a thorough cleaning, is I'm going to remove the reservoir for the brakes and clutch master cylinders, get it out of the car, flush it out, clean it out really well. And you can see that when you stuff a coyote into one of these things, you don't get a lot of room to work, a lot of clearance. And one of the things that, while you're building your car, you really ought to keep in mind is serviceability. Can I get to fasteners? Can I get to screws? And this is going to be kind of tight. I'm thinking I can get the reservoir off of the mounting bracket I built. If not, I'll have to remove the mounting bracket from the frame. But I should be able to get to these 2 screws down here, either with this nifty little right angle screwdriver that I've had for 40 years, or a combination of other stuff. So we're going to get this out of here and onto the bench. I have the 3 supply hoses going through a grommet that's punched in and going into the footbox opening. So I've got the grommet loose, and now I'm hoping to get this out of here, but I conveniently tie wrapped a wiring harness to keep it up out of the way. Tie wrapped a wiring harness to one of the hoses, so I have to get a cutter to snip that. now I should be able to snake this out of the foot box. There we go. And there's the grommet that the hoses go through. Here's my 3-chamber master cylinder reservoir on the bench. I've labeled the hoses as to which compartment they go to, and hopefully this will show up, but you can see that on my 2 brake reservoirs it's relatively clean inside, and then I can attribute that to probably when I flushed and filled the braking system back in April. I did not do the clutch at that time, and you can see the difference in the coloration. The clutch reservoir has a lot of black stuff down in the bottom of the well that corresponds to the same kind of black stuff that was inside the cylinder itself. So this just further verifies the need to get this thing off the car, take it apart, really flush it out, clean it out before it goes back in with fresh fluid. So I'm going to get the hoses off of the reservoir. These are old stainless steel dog food dishes I got from the dollar store, but they make great parts containers and drain pans. Get my clamps loose. I don't know if these will slide off because these are barbed fittings, and no, I'll probably damage or crack the plastic reservoir, so I'm going to have to slit these to get them off. Set that aside. I'll take my bolt out of the other end of the hose. And let these drain out a little bit. I'm going to get the hoses free, take my clamps off. And then slide them out of my grommet that goes into the foot box. And this is a standard electrical box plug or computer desk plug that I just drilled with the 3 holes for the hose to slip through. Okay, people, time for the big reveal, I think. I dug out my gun cleaning kit, and this is 1/4-inch hose, so I've got the stuff for a .22 rifle, and I got a cleaning swab on here on the rod. This is the front hose, and I'm going to just slide this in and pull it out, and there's a lot of that same orange looking stuff that was in the master cylinder, and I don't know if that'll show up on here or not, but right there's a little black fleck that the tip of the pencil just picked up, and it's discolored put another cleaning swab in. And this is the one for the clutch. Black. Well, this is my story and I'm gonna stick to it. What I think happened was, again, my ignorance. This is rubber fuel line hose. Says so right there. My ignorance was that I did not realize that fuel rated hose is not compatible with brake fluid. My understanding is that the brake fluid will start to chew on the rubber hose, degrade it, probably resulting in what this gray-black stuff is actually, lack of a better term, decomposed rubber. I'm also suspecting that the little black flecks or the crud that was in suspension are actually rubber particles floating in the fluid. My theory is, this is kind of a diagram of a master cylinder piston with the rubber seals, and then these lines represent the bore, that those little particles floating in the fluid get stuck or trapped behind the lips on the seal and are allowing a minute amount of fluid to escape past, and then out into the rubber dust boot. I never really noticed a problem with braking. I always had a firm pedal. The system bled easily, but that was before the rubber hose started to degrade. And then it was probably so gradual over time that I really didn't notice a decline in brake performance. But then with these deposits in the cylinder bores, it was not allowing the piston to retract, and or a little fleck of this degraded rubber got down into the return port on the master cylinder, and you saw what the inside of those master cylinders looked like. There was crud and gunk in there. So I'm pretty confident that because of the contamination of these rubber hoses degrading, that traveled through the system and was causing my problems. Solution: educate yourself about rubber hose. And what I learned is that rubber hose to be used with brake fluid is what's called EDPM rated, and that whatever EDPM stands for does not degrade in the presence of brake fluid. I ordered 10 feet of 1/4 inch EPDM rated hose, and unbeknownst to me that some manufacturers, they make that type of hose with a red jacket to distinguish it from other types of hoses, so that you know at a glance that this is brake fluid capable hose. So I've got my old ones, got my new one, I marked them, gonna cut to length, make new hoses, clean and flush the reservoir very well, and then determine after cleaning my master cylinders if a rebuild kit will work or if I have to purchase new ones. There's the grand reveal. my ignorance about rubber hose and not using the correct product for the job. And a little addendum, welcome to some 40-watt garage quick chemistry and metallurgy lesson. I queried Google about just the question, will brass fittings discolor brake fluid? And the response that I got was yes. Brass fittings can cause brake fluid to discolor over time, primarily due to corrosion. Now, brass fittings have been used on brake systems since the inception of hydraulic brakes on vehicles. So, you know, where do you draw the line, or where do you figure this out? So what happens, or at least according to the results that I found, is that standard brake fluid Pt.3 is what they call hygroscopic, meaning it absorbs moisture from the atmosphere. And what happens is, over time, the brake fluid corrosion inhibitors break down as the fluid absorbs moisture, and it creates a more corrosive environment inside the brake system. Bullet 2 is dezincification. It says when the fluid becomes corrosive, the brass fittings, which are an alloy of copper and zinc, they undergo a process called dezincification. During this, the zinc leaches out of the brass, leaving behind a slightly weaker copper-rich material. Bullet 3 is the released copper then gets suspended in the fluid, turning it a darker color. This causes the brake fluid to change from its original clear or amber color to a darker brown or possibly black. Important considerations listed. Fluid condition versus brass type. It is the degradation of the brake fluid, not the brass itself, that initiates the corrosion process. A brass alloy with a higher zinc content may be more susceptible to dezincification. It's a systemic issue. Dark, discolored brake fluid signals that moisture and contaminants have infiltrated the entire system. It indicates that the fluid's protective additives have been depleted and that it is time for a flush and fluid replacement. It's not just a problem with a single fitting. My takeaway on that is that I have reservoirs of fluid in immediate contact with brass fittings. So as this fluid degrades, there is a rich source of that dezincification process right at the source of the fluid. So it is going to quickly contaminate or discolor the fluid as the fluid absorbs moisture over time. If you go back to my earlier example with the 3 cups, fresh out of the can, after 6 months, after many years, it went from clear to amber to black. So that, the discoloration, I'm going to go with it, the chemistry of the dezincification of the brass. My failure, I am going to attribute to using the wrong type of hose. That's the information that I have gleaned. You can interpret it yourself. But like I said at the beginning of this, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. And I'm going to repair this, hopefully using the correct products, and not have this problem again. And probably be a little more diligent about doing flushes and fills on the brake and clutch system. looks like this fluid reservoir could be disassembled, top taken off, cleaned out, but I don't want to open the can of worms if the gasket or the O-ring is stuck and would potentially tear or rip. So I am just going to spray a ton of brake cleaner in through the top and through the hole and flush it out, drain it, flush it and drain it, and continue with that until it comes out clean. And you look at my drip pan and it's clean. You just look at the gunk coming out the bottom. Hopefully this will spray it out, clean it out. And I'm guessing that I will be doing this for quite a while. So we'll fill you in later. Well, after I got done last night, I slept on it. And with my newfound knowledge of chemistry and metallurgy and the reaction of brake fluid and brass, I decided to make a change. And what I did is ordered plastic, 90-degree, 1/8-inch pipe to 1/4-inch barb, 90-degree hose fittings. So I have removed the brass ones and exchanged them with the plastic, the nylon ones. So hopefully now I'm not going to have my chemical reaction degrading the fluid or changing the fluid's color, and it'll be more of a natural color change due to age or moisture absorption and not being contributed by the degradation or dezinkification of the brass. So that's where we're at with this. It's back to where it was a few minutes ago, except with now nylon fittings.